just been past that line, Japan warns of an imminent strong quake on northeastern Honshu Island.
And we're also hearing here, Harry, that the tsunami warning has been extended to the Pacific Basin. That's coming from one of the United States government agencies, that the tsunami warning is extended to the Pacific Basin. Now, one of the more alarming things we heard about all these warnings that are being issued around the Pacific Rim is the one we heard from our correspondent, Steph Varston, in Indonesia. She's in Jakarta, and she was telling us that in some of the outlying islands which make up Indonesia, it would be very difficult to communicate with people who live on those islands because they're in such remote areas.
Well, very much so, and there was a tsunami, not on this scale, but there was an earthquake and tsunami towards the end of last year off the southern coast of Indonesia, and just that happened. The people there didn't get a warning. In fact, there were problems with the warning system in the first place, let alone trying to get through to those people who live in these remote communities. So as good as the Pacific-wide system of buoys is, as accurate as the readings that we are already getting are, the last edge of this spider's web of telecommunications networks, that's always the problem, trying to get to the people in the most remote areas who are obviously will be the first ones to feel the effects of any tsunami heading their way.
And I guess even more worrying now for all these countries along the Pacific, especially for Japan, is this warning.
There's feedback. I'm still hearing the newscast. Do you want me to keep trying? It was very, very scary. I was in the shower. It was afternoon on Friday here, and I knew it was really, really bad, and I had to run out of the house as quickly as I could. I just grabbed a towel and ran out in front of our house. It was very cold outside, and my partner, Japanese partner, was upstairs on the second floor. We live in an old Japanese house that shakes quite a lot, and she was able to get downstairs and get out of the house. And the earthquake lasted a long time, and it seemed to be going on. It just seemed to keep going on, and we were just watching our house shaking right in front of us. And then we saw neighbors coming out of their houses and standing around their gardens, looking very concerned. There didn't seem to be any.
They can do what they can. I mean, I think a lot of the damage has already been done, as you can see, as these vast waves of water and debris sweep across the agricultural and the populated areas. There are a system of gates to try and keep tsunami water out of waterways going inland, and so I assume that those were already closed, and so that will have potentially minimized further progress through the natural water channels and the man-made water channels.
There's a boat being swept away.
Otherwise, it's really a case of just trying to douse the fires.
I see some cars moving too.
Survivors. We have had reports of in the city of Sendai and in that city collapsing. You can only imagine that this sort of thing has been replicated up and down the island of some structures. As good as Japanese architecture is in terms of trying to minimize the effects of an earthquake, there will be a lot of structures which haven't just been affected by the tsunami, but also by the earthquake which preceded it. And there were reports in that in Sendai of a number of people buried under the rubble. So I think the most urgent efforts will be to try to locate those who have been trapped and buried and try to rescue them. Earlier on we saw pictures of a woman waving a large white sheet, I think it was, on the end of a stick out of a window, trying to attract attention.
Oh my God.
Trying to get the help of rescuers. And so I think that will be the most immediate task in the minds of the emergency crews who are now being sent all across Japan.
Okay, thanks, Harry. That's Al Jazeera's Harry Forster talking to us from Kuala Lumpur there, where he's monitoring the Japanese earthquake. Now, you're watching Al Jazeera's extended coverage of that powerful earthquake that struck off the coast of Japan. A reminder of the latest developments. The U.S. Geological Survey are saying it measured 8.9 magnitude at a depth of 24 kilometers. That's regarded as a shallow depth where major damage can be expected. was centered off the coast, 380 kilometers northeast of the Japanese capital, Tokyo. And there is now a tsunami warning in effect for 53 different countries and territories around the Pacific Rim there. In the Japanese capital, Tokyo, a large building could be seen on fire and workers rushed into the streets. A 4-meter tsunami washed away cars and a bridge in Kamaishi City. Japan's defense ministry has scrambled military aircraft to assess the damage. According to Japanese television, all public transport in the capital has been stopped. Rail passengers have been left to walk along the lines. The quake has also sent tremors through the financial markets. Japan's Nikkei closed down 1.7%, hitting a 5-week low. And Japan's top oil refiner has halted operations of 3 refineries in Sendai, Kashima, and Negishi. But one installation in Chiba is on fire. It's still ablaze. A tsunami warning is now in effect for 53 countries and territories, as we've been reporting. There are 8 people confirmed dead so far, and we're hearing reports of people missing. Of course, these figures are likely to rise given the devastating footage we've been seeing so far in the past few hours. An emergency disaster response team has been set up to respond to the quake. Japan's Prime Minister has made a public address on national television. He promised the government will do all it can to secure the country and minimize damage. He said some nuclear power stations have been closed down, but that there's been no reports of any kind of leakage. That's radiation leakage that he was talking about there. And he's calling upon the Japanese people to keep a watch on television and radio reports and to act calmly. Al Jazeera senior meteorologist Steph Galter joins me now, live in the studio. Steph, thanks again for joining us. A few developments in the past few minutes. One, we're hearing from Hawaii. They're now on, well, the watch is now turned into an evacuation order. People have been asked to move away from the coastline. The other is NOAA, that's the National Oceanic Atmospheric Agency in the United States, is now saying that the whole of the Pacific Basin is now a tsunami warning area.
I wouldn't be surprised at that at all. And the problem with tsunamis is they actually move quite fast. They can move at around 700 kilometers per hour. And that's because they effectively move like shallow waves because they have such a long wavelength. They just ripple along the surface. So they can move incredibly fast. Having said that, fortunately, the Pacific's absolutely massive. So although they move relatively fast, we still have a while before it will actually hit. So we've got time to evacuate people like we're seeing in Hawaii and elsewhere where we're likely to be hit.
Now, another alarming thing that we've also just heard in the past few minutes, the Japanese authorities now saying that they expect another strong earthquake.
Sorry, guys.
Statistically, it is very likely that we are going to get some more earthquakes that are going to be strong. We've already seen aftershocks that have been over 7 in magnitude, and that would be a very large and potentially devastating earthquake if it happened on its own. But after this 8.9 earthquake, a lot of the buildings, a lot of the structures are likely to be damaged anyway. So another big hit on that, it could well bring more down. It's likely to be worse than just a 7 magnitude earthquake on its own after this one.
Now, when we talk about seismic activity, of course, Japan is prone to earthquakes. It's not the first time it's happened there. It's not going to be the last time it'll happen there. What exactly is taking place on the surface of the earth?
This picture showing the different plates that we've got around Japan. We've got the Pacific plate and the Philippine plate to the east of Japan, and then to the west we've got the Eurasian plate and the North American plate. And what's happening is the two on the east are going towards the west, so they're hitting each other, and then eventually the two on the east are actually being subducted underneath that other plate. It's happening around 8 centimeters a year, which might not sound much, but it's actually quite fast. And so as it goes under, the pressure will build up until eventually the pressure is too much, and then it will let go. And it's that letting go that causes an earthquake. And subduction is the worst type of earthquake if you're looking to avoid a tsunami, because as the earth gets dragged underneath, it will get pulled and pulled until suddenly it'll flick back. And it's that flicking motion that will cause this tidal wave, and that's what we're seeing now. And it's no surprise that the word tsunami is a Japanese word. That's where we saw them first. That's where they were noticed first. And it actually means a harbour wave in Japanese.
Right, and we're looking at a picture of the wave right now. Getting back to the surface, as we can see over there with that wave barreling down towards the coastline. The waves that are caused by the earthquake here, with this warning that the whole of the Pacific Basin is now under a watch or a warning, we're talking about a vast area of ocean, aren't we?
That's right. I mean, usually when you think of something moving a great deal, like